Hi, my name is Max Saperstone, and today I'm going to walk through a demonstration about using JMeter and Blazemeter in order to be able to test mobile applications, both web and native. The first thing we need to do is make sure that we have our JMeter properly configured so that we can so that we can record all of our information and get that exported so we can use it in Blazemeter. So in order to do that, we are going to want to open up our JMeter application, which we have right here, and we're going to go ahead and configure it. So under our workspace, we want to go ahead, add a non-tested element, an HTTP proxy server. We're doing this so that all of the traffic that's going to be passed is going to be passed through JMeter, basically using it as a proxy server. The only thing we have to do to actually configure this is go ahead and choose a port that we know isn't open that we can actually hit from another web address. So I'm going to go ahead, choose port 5013 because I happen to know that that is open. I'm not using that port for anything else on this particular device. I can then go ahead and click Start. JMeter is all set up to actually go ahead and record any traffic that we're doing. Under the test plan, I want to then go ahead, add a thread, and go ahead and add a thread group. This way we can actually capture all of our recordings. This is similar to what we'd normally be doing if we were creating any sort of other JMeter plan. Then within the thread group, I want to go ahead and add a logic controller and make sure that we actually have our recording controller. That way everything we recorded we can properly save. That's pretty much it for configuring JMeter. It's relatively simple. If we wanted to test this out, we could go ahead, go to a web page, and just go ahead and hit our localhost at 5013. And what we'll see is yes, some bad errors, but under our recording controller you can see that we did in fact record some traffic. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because we don't actually need this content within here. So let's close this guy out. Now we can hop back and actually configure our mobile device in order to hit our JMeter application. So you can do this with both an emulator or a physical device. I'm going to show you guys on an Android emulator, and I'll quickly talk through some of the setup in order to get this working on a physical device as well. But the only biggest thing you want to make sure is if you're using an emulator, if you use an Android, you have to be using the version 4.4.2 or greater, otherwise these options aren't going to be available to you. So let's go ahead, open up our different applications. Once we get in here, we want to go on to settings. While this is loading, and there we go, go into settings. This is the exact same steps right now that we would be using if we were on a physical Android device. On a physical device, we would go into settings. We would then click on Wi-Fi. We would click and hold down our Wi-Fi connection that we're interested in and click on Modify Network. We then go to Advanced Options, which we'll see in a moment. But because we're on an emulator, we don't have Wi-Fi as an option, so we have to go click on More. Within our More, then we'll be able to check out some of our mobile networks, some of our access points. So we can go in here, look at our mobile networks. And then go ahead, there should be some access points listed. We should have a fake access point, our T-Mobile, I believe. Yep. T-Mobile, that's our fake access point. We can click on that, and here, this will take us, as I said before, if you go ahead, find your Wi-Fi, click and hold, and click on Modify Network, you'd go ahead and see the exact same screen as you would here. So we want to go ahead and set our proxy. So it's going to give us an IP to enter in. In order to do that, in order to determine our IP, we actually have to pull that up for our machine. As you saw earlier in my browser, I went to localhost. Over here, we're going to need to pull up the actual IP of our machine. So if we go ahead and look at that, we can see that our IP is set to 10.180.154.66. So we're just going to go ahead, enter that in here. Now, if for whatever reason I was trying to connect not on a Wi-Fi through my phone, but if I was actually trying to connect on a physical device over the internet, we would need to make sure, rather than grabbing this address I happen to know is an internal one, we would have to actually grab our outward-facing IP address, and then we need to make sure that whatever router or firewall, if we had anything beyond us, was properly forwarding the port that we were looking for so that we could actually connect through. And that would be, again, the port that we're specifying in here. Because we're not, we don't actually have to worry about that, so that's going to save us some time. And here we're going to enter in our port 5013, which is what we set up in our Apache JMeter. So that is it. That's all you have to do to configure your phone in order to hit your proxy server, which we're running as Apache JMeter, which will then forward us on to the rest of our internet connections. If we were looking at this on an Apple device, and again, it's very simple. You just click on Settings, click on Wi-Fi, select your Wi-Fi configuration, scroll down to the very bottom of the screen, and there you're going to see the availability to set your proxy to manual or auto. If you go ahead and select manual, you can enter in your IP, you can enter in your port. It's pretty simple. So this is all saved. Let's go back to our home screen, and right now we're ready to record our network traffic. So we can open up our application, whether that's a native application or a web application. We can actually go ahead and start using it. For the sake of simplicity right now, let's just use a browser. And we're going to open that up, and we're going to try and generate some traffic on this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a web page. And as soon as we do, what we should see is actually some traffic being generated and recorded on our Apache JMeter session. So let's go ahead and close this out, and let's go to the web page of our choice, which I'm going to use Coveros' website. That's our company. We put on all this training. We write all of these courses. So we're going to go to www.coveros.com. Hit enter, and we should see this loading. While this page is loading, we should also see all of this traffic being generated under our recording controller. So you can see here we just got this little arrow indicating that yes, we do see some traffic. So something was trying to be pulled up. You can see we're trying to pull up our Coveros.com using HTTP protocol. You can also see we're getting our little icon, our fave icon. Some searches are being provided, so you can tell that it's querying what sort of what's our client, what other information is being passed back and forth, and then you can see, hey, look, this is clearly a WordPress site. You can see all this WP content loading. So, apparently there is a security issue, so we're just going to continue. We're not going to worry about this. But even within all of these individual queries, you can actually see there's a lot more information associated with them. We can tell whether they're a header, tell whether there's some actual content, whether it's a script, you know exactly what is being loaded for each of these guys. Pretty soon we should start seeing some content. As soon as this page actually loads. So as I said, make sure it's really nice to make sure that JMeter is actually pulled up and we're properly recording everything. Now that we're going to actually go ahead, we're going to record some data. I would suggest if you're capturing something, get at least 10 minutes of traffic. If you really don't want to grab that much data, another really great shortcut is click a few times and you can copy and paste some of the stuff from your JMeter session so that you don't actually have to rerun it multiple times. So let's see, our page is actually loaded. For the most part, we can actually scroll up. We can simulate all of our normal activity that we would on a normal device on our emulator. The main reason that I'm actually using an emulator for this particular demo is just because it's going to record on my screen a lot easier than me having to jump back and forth to recording a physical device and recording on recording on my screen. So let's see if we can go ahead and click on this training link and get some more information about our pages to load. So you can see here our application is responding, pulling up our solutions page. So now our solutions page has fully loaded. We can actually scroll around on that. We can read some of our training information. You can actually see down here we have started training today. See, oh look, we have Agile fundamentals, Agile testing, mobile app testing, which is what this video is a part of, some security testing, and some more information about each of these. We scroll down to the very bottom, you can even see a place to submit some information. So let's go ahead and do that so we can capture some traffic being passed back and forth. And enter in my name. So, as I said before, my name is Max Saperstone. Let's go ahead and enter in my email address. So if you guys have any questions, of course, feel free to contact me at my email, max.saperstone@coveros.com. And let's put in a message saying, I'm interested in learning more about Blazemeter and other mobile application testing solutions. Now we can scroll down a little bit more and submit this. As we can see here, the whole time, this guy's just growing, giving us more and more data the whole time, which is exactly what we'd expect. So there we go. You can see here, we had this guy actually send a form. You can see it said it has a from, has a sender name, has his body. All this information that's being passed is being wonderfully recorded within Apache JMeter. So let's call that enough for right now. Just for the sake of time, we can go ahead and hop back to Apache JMeter. Let's hop up to our proxy server. Let's click stop. It's going to tell us we're done recording all this information. Now what we want to do is save our test plan so that we can actually use it again. So let's go to save, and let's call this our Coveros website. Save our JMX file. Didn't like where I tried to save it, so we're going to try this again. Let's do a save as then. Let's go to our desktop. Save it there, and there we go. There's our Coveros website. If we go ahead, look at this guy. It should be a relatively large file if we want to make sure that we recorded and saved everything properly. And we can see, yeah, there's a lot of data being passed back and forth, which is exactly what we want to see. So now we can go ahead. So now we're going to go ahead, open up Blazemeter, and add a new test. If we go in here, we click on Add Test at the very top. We're going to go ahead, assign a test name. We're going to call this our Coveros website test. We're going to then want to add our JMeter's properties file. The recording that we just took, as you saw, I saved it to my desktop. So we want to look here, find our Coveros website JMX file. Then we want to go ahead and select our JMeter version. We are using JMeter 2.9. If we hop back here, you can actually go down to Help, About. You can see we're using 2.9 JMeter. One quick note, if you are using a different version, setting up the proxy server, some of the configurations that we did look at may be in a different area. So that is an exercise left up to you guys to actually determine the proper way to configure that. So then we want to look ahead and see exactly how we want to be controlling our JMeter setup. So do we want to be using the JMeter engine controls? Basically, do we want to have everything configured within our JMX file and use that, or do we want to actually use JMeter in order to control it? As I mentioned before, Blazemeter does kind of the same thing as JMeter, as it is a load test. It sets up concurrent users, has ramp-up periods that you'd expect. The big bonus of Blazemeter is you're in the cloud. If you've ever tried using JMeter on your own machine, typically after 20, 30 users, your machine is going to get bogged down. You're not going to be able to test anymore. Blazemeter, for the free trial, you can have 50 users running at once. If you have a paid tier, you can have thousands of users going at once. So personally, I like the default 50 users, 300-second ramp up, normal iterations. We can leave all those as they are. We can actually schedule our test around a later time if we want. I'm not going to worry about too many of the other testing properties right now. This is the really cool thing that Blazemeter adds that no one else has, is network emulation. You just say, am I going over the internet, what you normally expect, or you can choose, 3G, Edge, cable, DSL, poor, good, all these different great network types that you wouldn't otherwise normally be able to set. If you have internet, you can actually limit your bandwidth. You can, if you want to set custom, you can set your own bandwidth. You can set your own latency. If you go with, say, 3G poor, it's going to give you its own bandwidth. Same with 3G good. You can see the latency changes and the bandwidth changes for each of these. So let's go with 3G good for that. The other fun thing is user experience monitoring with Selenium. We can actually go ahead and tell it to monitor all of our traffic using and try and capture everything for Selenium, basically trying to mimic the end user based on all of the commands that we're sending. So let's go ahead, save all of this. Script name cannot include spaces. So let's then go ahead and rename our script name. No longer has spaces. You can see here everything else should be saved. Oops, we have to click on network emulation. Not saved, so we want to go ahead, fix that, set up our, now let's run with a 3G good if we can. Turn back on our Selenium experience. That part was saved. Click on save. So our test should be all saved, and now at this point we want to go ahead and run it. We get a test ID. All we have to do is up here at the top, click start. About to launch new test. Let's launch the servers. These tests generally take about an hour to actually run. So rather than wait around, let's go ahead and let's look at some reports of tests that I've run previously doing the same sort of thing. We see here session time 1 hour, standalone. If we go ahead and look at a previous test that I ran on the Coveros website, we can that's our test ID, but what we really want to see are our reports. So let's look at this report for our Coveros website. It's generated. You can see we have load results. We have a web driver because I'd chosen the same settings. I was interested in grabbing all the Selenium information. We have monitoring logs, any errors that were encountered. So all of these are all the different pieces of traffic that were passed back and forth based on all the commands we made. So you can see here the number of users. We got up to 50 users. See the response time that we were looking at. We can go ahead. We can look at the latency. We can see the number of hits. See the current active users. Because generally what will happen is after some of our users are done, we're going to ramp. We have the ramp up and we also have the ramp down. How many 200 errors do we have? Do we have any 500 errors? Pages not loading? Anything being non-responsive? And we can graph all of these next to each other. We can also go ahead, use this, narrow down our actual particular window it is we're interested in. Blazemeter provides some fantastic reporting tools. The other great thing, is while tests are running, you can actually be looking at some real-time monitoring. It'll tell you the CPU, memory usage of the actual machines that they stood up that are performing these tests out in the cloud. And that's pretty much it. These are all the results we want to be looking at. For some more information, if you go to our Coveros website, check out our blog, www.coveros.com. Do a search for Blazemeter, do a search for mobile testing. You can see all sorts of great other videos, all sorts of tools. Make sure you check out all the other videos we have on our YouTube channel. We have some other really great information in there. As I said, if you have any questions, go ahead, contact us, contact me, and hopefully you guys found this useful. Thanks.